Hello everyone, and welcome back to a brand new video. And today, as you can see by the title, we're going to be talking about setups, and specifically time trial or just general oversteery setups versus race setups. So essentially what I'm going to be doing today is doing two races, two 25% races. One of them is going to be with a very oversteery setup, and one of them is going to be with a more race balance setup. And I'm just going to show you what you can do, what you can change in the setup, and why you should do that, and how it'll make a difference in your races regarding lap time, tyre wear, all that stuff. So yeah, getting straight into it. So then, for the first race, we are going to be using the oversteery setup. 2/6 wings. If you look at the suspension, it was 111, 111, 1-2. So a lot of rotation there, and 50-53 on a differential. So yeah, we're going to jump the start. Just make sure we're in the lead by quite a while. We do on the AI interrupting when we're trying to get two representative race times to compare to. So yeah, don't worry about the setup and what to change. We'll get into that into the next race when we make the race setup. But yeah, I just wanted to show you how this oversteery setup performs, and show you my lap times and how the tires drop off as the laps go on. So yeah, you may not be able to tell just from the driving right now, but there's a lot of rotation. As you can see, we're kind of sliding through that corner in third gear. To be honest, it was quite fun to drive actually, just throwing it into every corner. Well, not this corner because we do that, ignore that. But yeah, we was able to just throw it in third gear to most corners, or most slow corners, and the car would just slide through, which is fairly good for cornering speed, but obviously with a tyre weight you're not going to be wanting to do that. And also something to note as well, doing 25% races isn't going to show that big of an effect compared to 50% races, but I just simply did not want to do two 50% races back to back. So we're going to be sticking to 25% for now, but hopefully that will still show the results that we're looking for. So yeah, ending lap 1 then, obviously that time is going to be pretty fast because we jumped the start and everything. But yeah, as you can see through turn 1, sliding through in third gear, and hopefully you can start to see the rotation that we're getting and just how that will affect the tyres. We are expecting maybe the first few laps on the softs, and maybe even more laps on the mediums, because the tyre weight isn't as bad, to be quicker on this more oversteery setup, just because we have more turning through the corners. But yeah, we're expecting the tyres to drop off quite heavily, and then more towards the end of the stint, the race setup will start to come into play and do much faster laps. And again, another corner where you just throw it in third gear, and I was just rotating perfectly through the corner. But yeah, and another thing worth noting is that when you have a setup with low stability, you run the risk of obviously just making more mistakes in general, and also trying to compensate too much by just going conservative into corners and stuff like that, and that can end up slowing you down even more. So that's why it's beneficial to just have a stable but still a solid setup that you can just feel comfortable with and set your maximum lap times with. So coming on to lap 3 then, we set a lap time of a 1:28.1. Take a mental note of that, just to compare it to the next few laps to see the drop off in pace. But yeah, the tyres still don't feel too bad at this point. Obviously only 3 laps in, so they're not going to feel too bad, but we're expecting to see a more aggressive drop off in performance with this setup compared to the more stable setup. That's the main benefit really of having that more stable setup. It might be a little bit slower over one lap, or just in raw pace wise, but it should be more consistent, and you should be setting faster lap times at the end of the stint, so you don't just completely drop off. So moving on to the end of lap 5, start of lap 6 then. As you can see in the top right, we've done a 28.8, which is quite far off what we did at the start of the race, but obviously this is our in lap now. The tyres are pretty much dead at this point. As you can see, still sliding through turn 1, We have to be a bit more careful on the traction now, obviously. So now the tyres are dying, and this is where the problems begin, when the tyres are dead, and you have to do stuff like this. So coming into this corner, as you can see, we're really conservative, making sure not to lose the rear end. Obviously, that's going to happen a little bit regardless, because the tyres are going to die no matter what setup you run. But yeah, it just makes it even worse on these kind of setups. So we're going really cautiously into the corners. And I think this corner will be another good example. Really cautious, slide, drift in through that corner. And yeah, now you can probably see where we're losing all this time. So yeah, we're going to come in this lap. There won't be much to show. As you can see, they're sliding through that corner again. There won't be much to show on the medium stint. You know, purely because they last quite long anyway. But just look through that corner. Look how much we're having to just fight the car. But yeah, we won't show much from the medium stint because both setups will handle them quite well. But yeah, skipping all the way to lap 14 then, coming towards the end of the race. Not much to show because, as I said, in a 25% race, the tyre drop off is not as big. But still sliding through some corners on this setup. Even on the mediums, because they have gone off a little bit. But we're just going to use up all our ERS that's remaining. And yeah, that's the first race done. And I'll show all the times that we did and our overall race time. And then we'll change the setup. I'll tell you guys what to change to make the car more stable or more suitable for the race. And then we'll do another race and compare times. And hopefully the second race on the more stable setup will show well, the results that we want, which is to be faster than with the oversteer setup. So, as you can see there, overall race time, 20 minutes, 57.157 seconds. We'll come back and compare that after we do our second race, and there you can see all of our lap times, which once again, I'll come back and compare once we're done. So, now, the most important bit, the part everyone is here for, what to change in the setup. So, although you don't want a super oversteer setup, obviously, and probably even worse, you don't want a super understeer setup. So we're actually going to leave the wings, although you can increase the rear wing for more just downforce towards the rear. You don't want to go below 2 front wing. Sorry, you really need that front end. The differential, you want to leave the on throttle at 50. Just everyone does that, and off throttle, you really want somewhere between 50 and 60. The more locked that it is, pretty much the less rotation you'll get off throttle. So we're actually going to increase it by 1 because we had a little bit too much rotation. So we're going to increase that to 54. The suspension geometry, you pretty much want to run right, left, left, or right, left, left, left. Not many people make too many adjustments to the suspension geometry. The main part of the setup, the interesting part is the suspension. So as you can see, we're running 111, 111, 12, and that's going to create a lot of rotation. But we're going to change that because, well, there was too much. So you can increase the ride height, which will give you more downforce, just at the expense of a little bit of straight line speed, which is why you may see wet setups have higher ride heights, just for more downforce. We're going to lower the rear anti-roll bar and increase the front anti-roll bar. At brakes and tyre pressures, you want to keep 150 and then minimum. There's no benefit to running anything else, pretty much. So, yeah, small changes, but they do make a difference, and you will see in this race. So, once again, like the other race, getting a jump start. Obviously, my penalties are turned off, otherwise I would have got a penalty for that. And yeah, we're literally just going to do the exact same thing. But hopefully, in this race, you'll be able to see just how much more stability we have, how much more I can push through each corner, and yeah, see the tyre drop off, whether it's more aggressive or less aggressive than last race. So coming into the middle sector for the first time then, and well, as you can see there, a lot more stable. Coming into this right-hander, normally we would pretty much drift through there, but now as you can see, we actually have to turn the car. So yeah, definitely more stable, just from making a few tweaks on the setup, and again, much less rotation, but still enough that we can get through the corner without understeering and without losing time. And obviously, this should help our tyres out, our rear tyres especially. It could, make the front tyres a little bit worse because we're having to just turn more. But it's not going to be too bad or bad enough to cause you any problem. So coming on to the end of lap 2 then, we're going to see what lap time we do. And it's a 1:27.9. And comparing this to the second lap of our previous run with a more unstable setup, you can see that we did a 28.1, so we've actually gained 2/10 despite being on what you could say is the more slower setup on raw pace. So honestly, I think that just comes down to having more confidence, being able to push more despite probably having less minimum speed through the corners. We're just able to push, especially through corners like these, without the worry of just losing the rear end, and that just gives you more confidence. But yeah, as you can see from the driving, still not sliding through any corners, and we're not particularly losing any time as we actually understeer through that corner. But important to remember as well, of course, you don't want to oversteer your setup, but you definitely do not want an understeer your setup. I understand people, like to drive with a stable setup. They don't want to feel like they're going to lose the car every single corner. But just remember not to be too conservative with the setup, because that can also cost you a lot of time. So bear that in mind. That's why we do not want to make too much changes to the setup. If we end up making it too understeery, then yeah, we're going to lose even more time. So keep making small tweaks until you find something that's A, fast, and B, generally comfortable for you. If you are more comfortable with a little bit of understeer in the car, that's fine, but just make sure that you're not losing time compared to your competitors. And if you like a more oversteer setup, that's fine, but make sure obviously you don't ruin your tires and stuff like that and make too many mistakes. So it's all about finding that balance, and it's down to your personal driving style, your preference. So keep that in mind as well. But yeah, hopefully you've been paying attention to the driving and just seeing that we're more just smoother, less mistakes, not sliding, as I said. But now we're going to move on to the end of lap 5, the lap before we pit on both races, doing the same strategy, of course. And last race, at this lap, we crossed the line at 28.8, and as you can see, we're 3/10 quicker. So you can tell then the tyres definitely feel better at this stage with the more stable setup, and that's what we're expecting. So we're going to box this lap then and do the exact same thing on the mediums. Again, I want to keep this video fairly short, so I'm not going to include much of the medium stint. But yeah, hopefully you can see, it should be pretty obvious, the benefits, or well, the negatives of running too much of an oversteer setup. And just remember, I think I've said this like twice now already, but in a 50% race, this would be even worse. With the oversteer setup, the tyres would drop off even more. So just remember that. If it's showing in a 25% race, then in a 50% race, which most people will be doing for league races and stuff, it's going to be much worse. So keep that in mind. Skipping to the end of the race then. Actually, something interesting. So on both runs, I had a little bit of ERS left to use on the final laps. A little bit more on this run, but we actually gain on our fastest time on the final lap of this run, which is interesting actually. And that just shows that at the end of this stint, the mediums still work much better compared to the other run. So yeah, we're going to compare lap times from both sessions, because I think this is the most interesting part, see the difference and why the oversteer setup is so much worse in race conditions. So this is race 1 with the oversteer setup, and as you can see by the race time in the top right, it took 20 minutes 57.157 seconds. Now comparing that to race 2, the overall race time was just about 2 seconds quicker. So again, over 25% race distance, that's quite significant, and over 50%, it would be quite a bit more, I would imagine. So yeah, and now comparing race times, we're still on race 2, and yeah, our second lap of the race was quicker. Our final lap in the soft stint was quicker. And interestingly, we did our fastest lap on the mediums right at the end of that stint. And comparing that to race 1, there's not even that much faster lap times at all. And the tyres drop off way more, especially at the end of that medium stint there. We did a 28.4 at one point, which we never did. And interestingly, despite the ERS differences, the final lap of my second run with the better setup was, 5/10 quicker than what I did with the O Series setup. So that's it from me today, guys. Thank you for watching. Again, leave any feedback, negative, positive, whatever, in the comments. I'm still learning how to do this. Anything you felt I left out, or any other videos you'd like to see from me, please leave it in the comments. I look at every single comment. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.